Shun was notorious as a wicked woman. Not only did she fall in love with her godfather, but she also secretly kept his clothes and eventually climbed into his bed, making the scandal known to all. Though they shared a bed, Cade Lee refused to even glance at her, leaving her to endure 30 years of a living widowhood. Yet when the earthquake struck, he used his own body to create a final space for her survival. At the last moment, the blood from his mouth fell onto Virushan's eyelid. And he spoke with a sense of relief. Virushan, you are my sin and my punishment. At last, I am free from both. If only we hadn't adopted you back then, how much better it would have been. At that moment, regret consumed her entirely. She knelt before the cross for 15 long years. Begging for a chance to start over, she would suppress all wild thoughts, only wishing for his success. When she opened her eyes again, Virushan found herself reborn. On the very day she had drugged Cade Lee. No. Stop. The man's bare torso was covered in scratches, the cross around his neck swaying incessantly. She desperately tried to push him away, but couldn't budge him an inch. Gazing at the man who was once noble, sacred, and untouchable but now drowned in lust, her heart was filled with sorrow. In her past life, she had been obsessed with Cade Lee, driven to madness by unrequited love. Disregarding that he was her godfather, she drugged him, climbed into his bed, and publicly demanded he marry her. Only later did she learn that Cade Lee and Axel Lin had long been engaged. It was just that they hadn't had the chance to tell her before she took advantage of the situation. In the end, she brought harm to both others and herself. In this second life, she had only one goal: to bring Cade Lee and Axel Lin together. Broken words spilled from her lips. Cade Lee, calm down. Cade Lee merely gave her a cold glance, then casually tore off the ever-present cross from his neck and shoved it into her mouth. Isn't this what you wanted? The disgust in his eyes was like a sharp knife, piercing Virushan's heart with unbearable bitterness. Indeed, this was the time when she pursued Cade Lee most obsessively, throwing aside all propriety and shame, attempting to seduce him 99 times. She deliberately got drunk and collapsed at his doorstep, confessed her feelings under the guise of seeking absolution, and even shamelessly threw herself into his arms in front of the congregation. Declaring she wanted to be with him forever, she stubbornly convinced herself that the reason Cade Lee remained unmarried was because he loved her just as deeply, constrained only by their differing statuses and ages. She believed that if she persisted, he would eventually accept her. But later she realized he had never loved her. Everything she had done was only bringing suffering upon herself. It's just a pity that she came to her senses too late. Tears slid from the corners of her eyes as she shook her head. Cade Lee, I know I was wrong. But Cade Lee still didn't stop. He gripped her slender waist, taking her again and again until the dawn broke, only then ceasing his actions, leaving Virushan covered in bruises like a broken doll. She trembled as she pulled the sheet over her body. Seeing this, Cade Lee sneered and gripped her chin. Virushan, you disgust me. He bent down to pick up his robe, then grabbed her arm and yanked her off the bed, dragging her into the confessional. Inside the confessional, beneath the cross, kneel. Cade Lee's slender fingers gripped a black ruler, his voice as cold as frost. Virushan bit her lower lip and knelt down. The next second, the ruler in his hand struck her back. She let out a muffled groan from the pain, her fingertips digging into her palms. As Cade Lee looked down at her from above, his voice was laced with a layer of frost. Disrespecting the godfather and committing the sin of lust, punishable, the ruler fell upon her back one stroke after another, as if to whip away the defiance buried deep in her soul. Virushan was in so much pain that she became numb, unable to hold on any longer, and collapsed onto the ground. Cade Lee. Her voice trembled uncontrollably. I have tainted your purity, violated your teachings. I regret it. I truly know I was wrong. Godfather. Hearing the words Godfather, the ruler abruptly halted mid-air. When Virushan was first adopted, she would cautiously call him Godfather, terrified of being abandoned by him. But later, she developed feelings she shouldn't have and started addressing him by his name directly, refusing to call him Godfather ever again. The warm candlelight flickered in his eyes, yet carried not a trace of warmth. I'm giving you one last chance. He dragged Virushan before the cross, his tone chilling. I want you to swear that you will never cross the line again in this lifetime. I, Virushan, swear to God, that I will never again harbor any improper thoughts toward Godfather Cade Lee. If I break this oath, may I die a horrible death." Cade Lee abruptly released his grip, and Virushan fell heavily back to the ground, the blood from her back dripping one drop at a time onto the floor, but he turned and left without even glancing at her. Her body ached terribly as she looked up at the enormous cross, and in a daze, she recalled the day she first met Cade Lee. Her father, blinded by gambling losses, was about to use her to settle his debts, while the people around them numbly went about their business, with no one stepping in to save her. Just then, Cade Lee, who had been preaching nearby, spotted her. Ignoring the protests of his followers, he stepped forward and rescued her. To this day, Virushan still remembers that the sunset that evening was the color of an orange, casting a warmth so profound it even softened the usually cold gaze of Cade Lee. He reached out, gently wiping away the mud from her face, and whispered softly, "From now on, I'll be your family, don't be afraid. I won't let anyone hurt you again." Cade Lee was truly good to her, and she longed so desperately to hold on to the first ray of light in her life that she completely forgot. When hands are tightly clasped, light ceases to exist. Tears of gratitude streamed endlessly from the corners of her eyes. Virushan closed her eyes. She would never forget the life-saving grace he had shown her across 2 lifetimes. This time, she would stay far away from Cade Lee, praying devoutly for him from a place beyond his sight. All she asked was for his peace and happiness in the years to come. After an unknown amount of time, Virushan finally regained some strength. Leaning against the wall, she stumbled toward her room. As she passed Cade Lee's room, a voice slipped through the slightly ajar door. His tone was cold, laced with a condescending disdain. "Virushan, just an orphan I picked up. Her thoughts are hardly worth considering." His gaze turned to Axel Lin, cold and calm. "Our union is the will of God. In this world, only a devout and pure nun like you is worthy to stand by my side." Virushan's eyelashes trembled slightly as she closed her eyes and continued dragging her steps back. Returning to her room, she took out her phone and made a call to her senior. "Senior, I'd like to ask, how does one become a Doctors Without Borders physician?" The person on the other end of the phone paused for a few seconds before exclaiming in delight, "You're really willing? That's fantastic. You're the student the teacher admires most. With you joining, surely many more lives will be saved." But why the sudden change of heart? Didn't you say you wanted to stay here? In her past life, her senior had also invited her, but back then, she only wanted to stay by Cade Lee's side, ultimately harming both others and herself. Now that Cade Lee had found someone he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, it was time for her to leave and atone for the sins she had committed. Thinking of this, Virushan took a deep breath. "I'm fortunate that God can hear my voice. But there are too many suffering people in this world whose cries God cannot hear. I must go out, I must save them." After hanging up the phone, Virushan took out the medical kit from her room and applied medicine to herself in front of the mirror. No matter how much she had acted out before, Cade Lee had never laid a finger on her. But now, her back throbbed with waves of pain. Trembling, she swallowed a painkiller, curled herself into a ball on the bed, and drifted off to sleep without realizing it. The night passed without dreams. When she opened her eyes again, Cade Lee was standing by her bedside, watching her. She had no idea for how long. "You had a fever last night. Why didn't you take any medicine?" His voice was hoarse. Virushan froze for a moment. She had taken painkillers last night and hadn't even realized she was running a fever, but this expression only confirmed Cade Lee's suspicions. A flicker of impatience flashed in his eyes as he stood up, his tone turning icy. "Virushan, Axel and I are already engaged." Virushan calmly met his gaze. "Congratulations, Godfather." Cade Lee still seemed uneasy. He frowned and was about to speak when Axel Lin's voice came from downstairs, lowering his voice. His tone icy cold, he said, "She's not like you, devout and kind. I hope you'll learn from Axel on how to devote your body and soul to God." His expression changed abruptly. After hurriedly warning Virushan, he headed downstairs, with Virushan throwing on her coat and following him out. "Have you had breakfast?" Cade Lee took Axel Lin's luggage, and both of them simultaneously made the sign of the cross on their chests. Axel Lin nodded with a smile. "Yes, I have. All the luggage is here." "Where will I be staying?" Cade Lee snapped out of his thoughts. glanced at Virushan, and said casually, "Vera, pack your things and move to the guest room." "No need, no need." Axel Lin quickly refused. "I'll stay in the guest room. No." Before she could finish speaking, Cade Lee interrupted her, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I've already made my decision. Don't make me say it again. As for Virushan, she's already 22 years old. She'll leave here sooner or later." As the words fell, Virushan lowered her eyelashes. Back then, she had been brought home by Cade Lee, but deep down, she still believed she would be abandoned sooner or later. She didn't dare say what she wanted to eat, nor did she dare tell Cade Lee that she had nightmares every night and couldn't sleep. It was Cade Lee who noticed first. With quiet determination, he converted the study next to his room into her bedroom, making the walls very thin. When she tossed and turned at night, he would appear, holding her and repeating, "Don't be afraid, this will always be your home." Virushan curled her lips in self-mockery. Now, this is the home of Axel Lin and Cade Lee. And she has no reason to stay any longer. When she looked up again, all emotions in her eyes had been neatly tucked away. Godfather was right. "Sister Axel, wait for me. I'll pack my things right away." Many items in the room were treasures she had stolen in the past: tie, cufflinks, shirt. Virushan looked at each item, her eyes stinging. Before leaving, she would clear everything away, just like her final reluctance towards Cade Lee. In the following days, Virushan left early and returned late to attend Medicine Sans Frontiers training. When she got home, she shut herself in her room, doing her best to avoid running into Li Shu. Yet no matter how hard she tried to avoid it, she would eventually have to step into the church. Every time she stepped through the gate, she would see the envious gazes of the believers fixed on the two of them. Thanks be to God's grace for bringing Axel and Father Lee together. What a match made in heaven. Even the divine light showers them with special favor. "Vera, come here." An elderly nun seized her arm without hesitation and pulled her toward the altar. "Hurry and give thanks to God for blessing you with such a wonderful family." There, Cade Lee was whispering to Axel Lin beside him, "Just don't forget next time." Axel Lin accidentally dirtied the holy water, but there wasn't a trace of blame in Cade Lee's eyes. The way he looked at her was always filled with respect. Never like the way he looked at himself, as if he were trash. Virushan curled her lips and turned to go home. Moments later, Cade Lee's voice could be heard outside the door. His tone was icy and resolute. "Virushan is different from you. She is selfish by nature, stops at nothing to achieve her goals, and never considers kindness. There's no need for you to care about her feelings." Virushan paused, put on her headphones, and continued packing her luggage. This morning, she received a text message informing her that she had passed the interview for Doctors Without Borders and would soon be sent for on-site assessment. After dinner, she pulled out the box hidden under her bed, ready to burn it. Just as she reached the backyard, Virushan received a call from her senior. Hearing his voice, her eyes curved into a smile. "Yes, I've already passed the interview with Doctors Without Borders. My luggage is packed, and I'm ready to leave anytime. Don't worry. My godfather won't interfere with me." Before she could finish, her gaze fell on a corner, and her pupils suddenly constricted. Almost immediately, she hung up the phone, her smile freezing as she called out, "Godfather." Standing in the shadows, Li Shu walked toward her step by step. "Where are you going? Why didn't you tell me?" His tone was calm, as if casually asking, yet his gaze was utterly cold. Virushan slightly furrowed her brows. She wasn't sure how much Cade Lee had heard, but she didn't want him to know she was planning to join Doctors Without Borders, so she took a few steps back, creating distance, and said, "Just an old senior from school invited me on a trip, that's all." Cade Lee let out an ambiguous chuckle. "Is that so, or are you scheming something again? Thinking this would get my attention?" As he spoke, his grey eyes fixed intently on her, carefully observing her reaction. Virushan quickly shook her head. "No, Godfather, I've already given up. I know you like Sister Axel. There's no possibility for us. It was my immaturity before, but now I just want to be a good adopted daughter to you. I wish you and Sister Axel a lifetime of happiness together." Her tone was sincere. Fearing that Cade Lee might misunderstand her as still holding on to hope, the more this happened, the darker Cade Lee's gaze became. He looked at her, forcing out a mocking sneer. "If you were truly as open as you claim, You wouldn't be avoiding me, and Axel Lin wouldn't deliberately let me hear that you're leaving. Step by step, he closed in on her, his expression cold. Virushin, your tricks are still as clumsy as ever. With that, he suddenly raised his hand. And Virushin had no time to dodge. The box in her hand fell heavily to the ground, the personal items of Cade Lee that she had secretly hidden, tie clips, pens, suit accessories, scattered across the floor in an instant. Cade Lee lowered his gaze to his lost belongings, his tone indifferent. So this is your way of giving up? The sarcasm in his words felt like a sharp slap across the face, and Virushin burned with shame. It was all her fault. She had been too stubborn, clinging to Cade Lee for far too long. Even when she told the truth now, he no longer believed her. In Cade Lee's eyes, Virushin was nothing but a shameless liar. Virushin hung her head in silence for a long while. Cade Lee stepped forward, gripping her face with forceful fingers. Disciples must not lie. You shall be punished. The hazy moonlight reflected in his pupils, like the sharpest blade, slicing her into 1,000 pieces. After a long silence, Virushin forced a bitter smile. I didn't lie. Cade Lee looked at her reddened eyes and instinctively loosened his grip. Seizing the opportunity, Virushin broke free from his control and picked up the diary from the ground. From the first flutter of love until now, 5 years, over 1,000 pages, every word filled with her infatuation for Cade Lee, peelable. Just 1 minute, 60 seconds. The paper made a harsh sound as she struck a match under Cade Lee's astonished gaze. Orange flames danced in her eyes as she spoke with unwavering determination, clear and unmistakable. Godfather, I swore to God, if I ever have any improper thoughts about you again, die a horrible death. As the words fell, she wasn't sure if she imagined it, but a flicker of fear seemed to pass through Cade Lee's eyes. Just as she tried to get a better look, Cade Lee suddenly spoke. You haven't forgotten. Good, remember this. I am your godfather, and in this lifetime, I will only ever be your godfather. After that day, the two maintained a superficial calm, just as they had after that night. No one ever mentioned that unspeakable past again. Only, one wanted to erase it completely, while the other simply didn't care. Soon, it was the church's Sabbath day, and when everyone learned that Cade Lee was about to become engaged to Axel Lin, they all came to offer their congratulations. Even Mother Lee, who has always been in poor health, attended in a wheelchair. Virushin immediately stepped forward to help, but whether intentionally or not, Mother Lee pushed her hand away. Then, Mother Lee took Axel Lin's hand and said with gentle eyes, My dear child, with you by Cade Lee's side, I can rest assured. Virushin withdrew her hand that was suspended in mid-air and turned to leave alone. At that moment, Mother Lee called out to stop her. Her voice was soft, carrying a hint of a smile. They make a good match, don't they? Virushin nodded. Mother Lee gave her a surprised glance before speaking tactfully. Mother Lee looked at her with profound meaning. It seems you've grown up, knowing what's appropriate and what's not. Since that's the case, it's time for you to leave. I know you're reluctant, but you must understand, your presence will only become a stain on him. If you still have even a shred of gratitude for him, go, and don't come back. After speaking, she turned her gaze to Virushin, as if waiting for her hysterical refusal or tearful pleas, but Virushin just looked ahead, watching as Cade Lee was surrounded by a crowd, receiving their blessings. In their past life, she and Cade Lee had never received anyone's blessings, even his mother, who had once doted on her the most, forbade them from attending the funeral. Cade Lee never made it back to the church before his death. He had done nothing wrong, yet because of her, he went from being a beloved priest to a man scorned by all. Virushin withdrew her gaze and smiled. Of course, the godfather has his own life now, and it's time for me to pursue my own dreams. I've passed the interview with Doctors Without Borders. I probably won't be coming back after this. Hearing this, Mother Lee's expression changed abruptly. She frowned and said, I only wanted you to leave, Cade Lee. I never meant for you to go to your death. Doctors Without Borders always faces the most dangerous situations. War, plague, disaster. Virushin suppressed the ache in her heart and reached out to hug Mother Lee. I'm deeply grateful for the guidance you and my godfather have given me. No matter where I go, I'll always pray for you and wish you both peace and happiness in the years to come. Seeing this, Mother Lee finally stopped persuading her. She took off the pendant she always wore and pressed it into Vera's palm. "This pendant brings good luck. Stay alive and come celebrate Christmas with me again." Only after Mother Lee left did Verashin cover her face and let the tears flow freely. When she finally composed herself and looked up, she saw Cade Lee standing not far away, watching her with a complicated expression. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped forward and handed her a tissue. Verashin didn't take it, wiping her face haphazardly as she casually said, "Godfather, I've truly let go. I was just moved by the pendant grandmother gave me." After speaking, she forced a smile and turned to enter. As they brushed past each other, Cade Lee's cool voice suddenly fell. "Verashin, I can't reciprocate your feelings, but I've sworn never to let anyone hurt you again. So, even if I marry Axel, you can still live at home. I can protect you for a lifetime." Axel Lin, who had come looking for Cade Lee, froze with a stiff smile. Her puzzled gaze darted back and forth between the two. "Can't reciprocate your feelings. What does that mean?" Verashin froze abruptly, nervously looking at Cade Lee. That day, Cade Lee didn't explain anything to Axel Lin, and Verashin also didn't know where to begin. Some things are wrong the moment they're mentioned. Coincidentally, she received the notification for the final assessment, so she simply packed a few clothes and left. On the second day of arriving in the village, she was assigned to investigate whether there were still people infected with the plague in the village. "Sister," a faint voice came from the corner. Verashin looked up and saw a little girl, so thin she was practically skin and bones, leaning against the doorframe. Her belly was swollen high, like a balloon ready to burst at any moment. Kwashiorka, she thought instinctively, but she had left in a hurry and had only a single piece of fruit candy in her bag. The girl carefully took it, and as soon as the tip of her tongue touched the candy, she froze. She turned and shook the person on the ground. "Little sister, it's candy, sweet, eat it, and the bitterness will go away." A blissful, sweet smile spread across her small, palm-sized face. Verashin's pupils suddenly constricted. The person on the ground was already dead. Flies and maggots crawled over her skin, but the girl, as if blind to it, said, "If you don't get up, I'll eat the candy myself." "Okay, all right, don't sulk. I shouldn't have eaten all the roots, but I was so hungry. I didn't eat any of the candy this time. I'll give it all to you, okay? Forgive me." Verashin stood there, her throat as if stuck with a fishbone, unable to swallow or spit it out. The girl's image kept overlapping with her mother's shadow. Back then, her mother had held her just like this, forcing the blood-stained steamed bun into her mouth. She said, "Daddy didn't take all the money. Mommy has already eaten. Be a good girl, Vera, eat it yourself." Verashin was too hungry. She had intended to take just one bite and give the rest to her mother, but in the end, she ended up eating all of the buns. When she woke up the next day, her mother was nothing more than a cold corpse. Silent tears soaked her cheeks as she picked up the struggling girl and carried her toward the camp. Along the way, many people watched them leave with numb, lifeless eyes. Motionless as if already dead, Verashin slowly clenched her fingers. She couldn't save her mother. Couldn't save the little girl who had died. But at the very least, she was determined to save her. 5 days later, the assessment ended, and Verashin pushed open her front door once more. At that moment, the Lee family was holding a mourning ceremony. She stood there in a crumpled white coat, her hair disheveled and unkempt. Everyone's expressions changed. Axel Lin, standing in the center, flashed a barely noticeable trace of disgust in his eyes. "Vera, do you realize we're mourning the refugees who died from the plague? Dressing like this is disrespectful to the gods and a desecration of the dead." Verashin ignored him, gazing at the barely touched food on the table. She suddenly spoke, "Will any of you actually eat this?" The crowd was taken aback by the question, unsure how to respond. "Everyone has gathered here to mourn those who have perished from famine, war, and plague," said Axel Lin, dressed in a nun's habit, clutching a cross with sorrowful eyes. "How can you still think of eating?" She glanced at Verashin, thinking to herself that no matter how refined, a lowly bloodline would always remain like a pig, obsessed with food. "If we don't eat, then what should we do with all this food?" Verashin's voice was soft, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "Pour it out," she said matter-of-factly. "God has blessed us with abundance. What does it matter if some food is left over?" Virushin looked at the faces around her and was about to say more when Kadely spoke up. "Stop this," he said, dressed in his black priest's robe, looking down at Virushin. "Apologize to Axel. I did nothing wrong." Her knuckles turned white from gripping too tightly. Yet the fury in her heart did not diminish in the slightest. That girl had ultimately died in her arms, starved to death, yet Axel Lin, under the pretense of mourning the deceased, indulged in reckless waste. Virushin stared fixedly at Axel Lin's face and enunciated each word clearly. "The one who should apologize is her." Axel Lin bit her lower lip and feigned magnanimity, saying, "Forget it, Kadely, don't pressure Vera, it's fine with me." At that moment, a video suddenly appeared on the screen. The video showed the very night she drugged Kadely. She clung tightly to Kadely from behind, her smile twisted. "Whether the forcibly plucked melon is sweet or not, you won't know until you pluck it." All eyes instantly turned to Virushin. How disgusting! How could someone fall in love with their own godfather? Axel is so pitiful. She devoted herself to God. What did she do wrong to be humiliated like this by Virushin? God, we are mourning the dead, yet she commits such devilish acts. Virushin's breath caught. No, she already knew she was wrong. She had already given up, already atoning for it. But her voice of defense was drowned out by the crowd's curses. Axel Lin also saw that video, her face suddenly turning pale. She gave Kadely a sorrowful glance, then turned to leave. Kadely wrapped his arm around her waist. "Axel, let me go." As soon as Axel Lin spoke, tears began to fall. "Kadely, I truly considered Vera as family, yet she did such a thing. Even if I married you, every time she appears before me, I'll remember that scene. I can't accept it. Let go. I don't want to hate you and her." She lifted her face, the chandelier illuminating her tears, making her look like a glowing angel. Boom! A dull rumble of thunder suddenly sounded. Rain was coming. Kadely firmly covered Lin Saran's eyes with his hands, his gaze flickering with an unreadable mix of emotions. "Godfather, please let me explain." Virushin took a deep breath. "I truly have no ulterior motives toward you, and this video wasn't my doing." Silence. Kadely's usually light-colored eyes had darkened completely, heavy and impenetrable like storm clouds. "Virushin, I regret it now. I never should have brought you home. You're a born wicked woman, devoid of morality, without a shred of shame, and forever unrepentant. I've already told you I won't be with you, yet you still did something like this." He looked at Virushin with an expressionless face, but his voice was chillingly cold. "Get out." Virushin froze in place. She knew Kadely was truly furious. His current demeanor overlapped perfectly with that of his past life. He said word by word, "From now on, you and I have nothing to do with each other." After speaking, he no longer looked at her, lowering his head to gently comfort Axel Lin, continuously kissing her forehead. Meanwhile, Virushin was grabbed by the arms by the bodyguards and dragged directly outside, followed by another clap of thunder. The long-suppressed downpour finally began, instantly drenching her thin clothes. Never mind, didn't she want to leave long ago? Leaving now is just the same. She'll go far away, completely disappearing from the lives of Kadely and Axel Lin. This way, Kadely should be happy, right? Virushin actually didn't know where to go. She trudged forward along the road through the rain, countless neon lights flickering in the downpour, yet not a single one was her home. The exhaustion of the past days overwhelmed her body. She couldn't walk any further. Virushin found a bench and sat silently in the rain. Just then, her phone vibrated. A birthday greeting from the cake shop. "Kadely wishes you a happy birthday." It was something Kadely had arranged for her in the past. As long as the cake shop remained open, even if he were gone, the birthday wishes would still arrive punctually. Her cheeks grew warm as she haltingly sang happy birthday to herself. "Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me." On her 23rd birthday, Kadely abandoned her too. From that moment on, she no longer had any family left. The world before her grew increasingly blurry, and as she finished singing the last line, she collapsed weakly into the curtain of rain. When she woke up again, she found herself back in the Lee household. Kadely stood coldly by her bed, wearing a pair of black gloves, as if unwilling to let even his fingertips touch her. "First, You deliberately leaked the video to force Axel to leave, then fainted on the roadside, using a sympathy ploy to make her forgive you. You really are quite the schemer. But remember, I'm not her. I'm not so easily swayed. No matter what you do, I will never be with you. Virushan coughed a few times and calmly said, I know, actually. I came back this time to tell you. I'm leaving. Before she could finish speaking, the door opened from the outside. And Axel Lin walked in carrying a glass of warm water and medicine. Her gaze toward Virushan still seemed somewhat unnatural. Take the medicine and get some rest. With that, she set them down and left immediately. Cade Lee quickly chased after her, and no one heard the second half of Virushan's sentence. She said, I'll never come back again. In the following days, Axel Lin visited several times. Seeing her pale complexion, Virushan recalled how in her previous life, Axel Lin had been so distraught that she ultimately chose to take her own life, so she secretly contacted her senior to come visit her and lied to both Axel Lin and Cade Lee. This is my boyfriend. Soon, we'll be going abroad together. Axel Lin visibly relaxed, but Cade Lee's expression turned cold and gloomy. Virushan couldn't understand why. Since she had given him up to be with someone else, shouldn't he be free from worry now? Why was Cade Lee still unhappy? She couldn't figure it out. Nor did she dare to dwell on it. After that day, Axel Lin seemed to have completely let go of his reservations. Wherever she went, she would call Virushan along, even involving her in the wedding preparations. Virushan watched as Cade Lee patiently accompanied Axel Lin to try on wedding dresses, listened as Axel Lin teased Cade Lee for trembling uncontrollably while rehearsing putting on the wedding ring, and stood by as the two meticulously went through every detail of the ceremony on the wedding stage. How wonderful, she genuinely thought to herself. Kind-hearted people ultimately find happiness together, and even a villainess like her could make a graceful exit. Vera, would you and your boyfriend like to hold your wedding here too in the future? Axel Lin wanted a special wedding and finally settled on the shadowless church on the coastal cliff, seeing the pure white walls. Her eyes sparkled with delight. Virushan, however, noticed she was standing too close to the cliff and frowned. Don't stand so close to the edge, it's dangerous. Okay, I'm coming back now. Axel Lin smiled, but as soon as she lifted her foot, she exclaimed, oh no, my foot's gone numb, watching her sway unsteadily. Virushan had no choice but to step forward and pull her back, but just as she helped Axel Lin up, he suddenly said, that day, you went inside. Why didn't you come out? Virushan was startled. The video played at the time had been edited, and everyone assumed she had been thrown out by Cade Lee. Why would Axel Lin ask such a question? It finally dawned on her. That video had been uploaded by Axel Lin. But why? Why did Axel Lin have to expose everything? She was already with Cade Lee, and there was no chance left for him. Axel Lin still wore a clean smile on his face. You slept with Cade Lee, didn't you? She asked bluntly, and Virushan immediately fell silent. Unsure of how to respond. I didn't want to do this, Axel Lin sighed, his tone filled with pity. But Cade Lee can't have any blemishes. Go in peace. May God have mercy and guide your soul to heaven. With that, she gave a forceful tug, and Virushan immediately stumbled and began toppling toward the cliff's edge. Axel Lin watched expressionlessly, but in the next second, her face abruptly changed. Virushan had somehow managed to kneel and steady herself, avoiding the fall. Her facade of innocence shattered completely as she stepped forward to strike again, only to trip on a rock and plummet downward. Ah! A piercing scream tore through the sky. Not far away, Cade Lee whipped his head around just in time to see Axel Lin collapsing helplessly in his line of sight. The next second, Virushan lunged forward, gripping her arm tightly. The protruding rock cut through a vein, and dark red blood dripped onto Axel Lin's face. Save me, I don't want to die. Axel Lin screamed in terror, her nails digging into Virushan's flesh. Virushan, forgive me, don't let go. Virushan didn't speak. She clenched her teeth, trying to pull Axel Lin up, but her strength wasn't enough. Instead, she nearly got pulled down herself. Fortunately, Cade Lee arrived just in time and finally managed to pull Axel Lin to safety. He saw Virushan's blood and his expression changed abruptly. What happened? The next second, Axel Lin fainted and collapsed to the ground. Without another thought for Virushan, he scooped up Axel Lin in his arms and strode away. Virushin didn't call out to stop him. Tearing off a piece of her shirt, she pressed it firmly against the wound and took a taxi to the hospital. After getting bandaged, she opened her phone and checked her messages, only to find one. A notification confirming her official acceptance as a Doctors Without Borders physician, along with, "We need to assemble and head to the war-torn frontlines in 3 days." She paused, her gaze falling on the wedding photo of Cade Lee and Axel Lin. They looked so perfect together, and she would only be the stain between them. Virushin lowered her lashes, her fingers moving slightly, received, upon returning home. Virushin was about to turn on the light when her wrist was suddenly seized with a grip so strong it felt like her bones might shatter. "Why did you push Axel off the cliff?" Under the pale moonlight, the fury in Cade Lee's eyes was almost tangible, radiating a viciousness that seemed ready to tear the person before him to pieces. "What? I pushed her off the cliff," Virushin retorted in disbelief. "Cade Lee, I was the one who pulled her back with all my strength. How could I? Keep pretending. Go ahead with your act." Cade Lee cut her off directly. Not believing a single word she said, he forcefully threw Virushin to the ground, grabbed the horsewhip from the wall, and lashed out with it. "If you didn't push her, why would she have fallen for no reason?" His voice was hoarse, unable to conceal the disappointment and disgust in his tone. "Axel has pleaded for leniency on your behalf countless times in front of me, and this is how you repay her, without even a shred of remorse." The last word had barely left his lips when the phone suddenly rang. "Father, it's terrible. Miss Axel has committed suicide in the hospital." Cade Lee snapped back to reality and rushed out in long strides, the sticky blood seeping from the wounds on his back where the whip had struck. Virushin's face was deathly pale. Yet as if numb to pain, she scrambled up from the ground and followed. Why did Axel Lin still choose to end her life? What exactly was wrong? She had been perfectly fine just moments ago. The numbers on the dashboard kept soaring, and the world outside the window became a blur. The closer they got to the hospital, the faster Virushin's heart raced. She was afraid of hearing the news that Axel Lin had died. A few minutes later, they finally arrived at the hospital. Cade Lee jumped out before the car even came to a complete stop and strode into the building. The nurse said with a face full of anxiety, "The patient is in hemorrhagic shock, and we currently don't have enough Rh-negative blood in stock. Take mine." Without hesitation, Cade Lee rolled up his sleeve, as bag after bag of blood was sent into the operating room. His complexion grew increasingly pale, but it still wasn't enough. Axel Lin had lost too much blood and needed multiple times the amount to recover. "Keep going, I can handle it." "No, you can't donate anymore, you've already exceeded 600 milliliters. Continuing could be dangerous." The nurse firmly refused, but Cade Lee held onto the blood-drawing needle, unwilling to let go. "Let me do it," she said softly. "Consider it as atonement." Cade Lee finally released his grip, giving her a complicated look. Virushin offered no further explanation. In her past life, she had been stubbornly deluded and ultimately caused the death of the person she loved most. Now, all of this stemmed from her indecisiveness, as she clung on with countless excuses. Refusing to leave, scorching blood continued to drain from her body, and the repeated blood loss made Virushin tremble uncontrollably. Yet, Cade Lee beside her remained utterly oblivious, his eyes fixed on the illuminated sign of the operating room, his brow tightly furrowed. Dazed, she thought to herself, "So this is how Cade Lee looks when he's in love, so vivid, so emotional, nothing like the coldness when she was with him." The wound on his back ached again. It wasn't until the nurse finished drawing the last bag that she finally couldn't hold on any longer, tilting her head and completely losing consciousness. When Virushin woke up again, it was already the next day, and the nurses were all praising how devoted Father Lee was. Turns out after she fainted, there still wasn't enough blood, and Cade Lee recklessly insisted the nurses draw his own blood anyway, which led to coagulation dysfunction and nearly cost him his life. She silently got out of bed, completed the discharge procedures, and returned home to pack the last of her belongings. Virushin boarded the car that came to pick her up, and while waiting for her other colleagues, she received a call from Cade Lee. His voice was hoarse and weary. "Axel is out of danger. I won't be back these days, considering you donated blood. I won't lay a hand on you again." She listened in silence, offering no defense. She had explained it so many times before, but in Cade Lee's eyes, she was nothing but a morally corrupt woman. He would never believe her. There was only silence on the other end of the line, and Cade Lee's expression grew increasingly somber. He closed his eyes briefly before finally making his decision. Virushan, leave, go away and never come back. Virushan nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. Softly, she replied, okay, then waiting for Cade Lee to hang up the phone, but after a long while, she heard Cade Lee say coldly, let me know once you find the address, I'll come see you in the future. Okay, she replied obediently. The long-drawn-out call finally ended, and the steaming heat outside the window distorted the world slightly. With everyone on board, the bus finally started moving, watching the passing cars. Cade Lee let out an inexplicably irritated TSK, but he didn't see that on the car disappearing before his eyes, Virushan was bidding her final farewell, with a relieved smile on her face. Her voice light, she silently waved to him. Cade Lee, the me you detest will never appear again. In the rearview mirror, the man completely disappeared. Virushan withdrew her gaze and deleted all of Cade Lee's contact information. The airplane's tail left the city's clamor behind as she wearily closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. The distant sun was about to rise, just like her tomorrow. A month later, Cade Lee and Axel Lin's wedding took place as scheduled. The opulence of the wedding left even the most worldly guests gasping in awe. The wedding favors were diamond-encrusted cross pendants, each gift box marked with a six-figure price tag. The double-layered roses adorning the venue were airlifted in just this morning, and even the tableware and cutlery were priceless antiques. But what truly took everyone's breath away was the figure standing before the altar, waiting to officiate the ceremony. It was none other than Cade Lee's mentor, the current pope. Except for the royal family, he almost never officiates weddings. And no one knows how much effort Cade Lee put in to make him break his rule. In the dressing room, the guests are all saying how envious they are that you get to marry Father Lee, for you. He even moved his unshakable Wednesday confession time to the afternoon and declined the evening prayer mass, just to go to Paris to reorder the fabric for your veil. Lynn Sirouet's cheeks flushed slightly, her heart brimming with pride. At this moment, she desperately wished Virushan were outside, hearing firsthand how much Cade Lee doted on her. What a pity. Meanwhile, in the lounge, Cade Lee was also waiting for Virushan. After receiving yet another denial, his expression turned completely cold. A month ago, after Virushan went abroad, not only had there been no phone calls, but even text messages had ceased entirely. After all, it was a child he had raised himself. No matter how much he detested Virushan's feelings for him, he didn't want anything bad to happen to her. So, he sent someone to keep an eye on Virushan, reporting every detail of her life to him daily. He knew Virushan had rented an apartment in Italy, knew her wounds were starting to heal, knew she had even met a new man. He should have been relieved, yet something in his heart felt off. Let her come back for my wedding, but Virushan didn't agree, and to this day, she hasn't even said a single happy wedding, as if determined to draw a clear line between them. How could this be? She was always the one who couldn't bear to be apart from him. Cade Lee grew increasingly restless. He opened the encrypted communication. It's raining today. Miss Shen didn't go out. His knuckles gripping the phone turned slightly white as he restrained himself to sending just one sentence. How was she today? Almost the next second, there was a response from the other end. So quick it seemed pre-prepared. Everything is normal. Miss Shen went shopping with friends today. Please rest assured. The text was even accompanied by a photo of Virushan. The person in it was unrecognizable, but the clothes were indeed hers. You can rest assured now, he told himself once again. His fingers unconsciously rubbed the cross on his chest, and after a moment of hesitation, he still dialed Virushan's number. The receiver immediately played a mechanical female voice. The number you have dialed cannot be reached for the time being. Can't get through. Blocked. She must still be angry. Hadn't he known all along? Virushan's obsession with him bordered on madness. The absurdity of this thought made Cade Lee breathe a sigh of relief. Anger, at least, proved she hadn't done anything drastic. That was good. Just as he was about to lock the screen, a news alert popped up on his phone. Conflict escalates in African country X. MSF facility attacked by unidentified armed group, multiple casualties reported, several medical staff still missing. He instinctively looked down at the cross pendant that never left his chest. Click. A faint snap sounded. The cross that Veerushan had once held between her lips broke without warning. Cade Lee's brow twitched violently. Just then, Mother Lee pushed the door open, and he instinctively asked, "Mother, has something happened to Vera?" Cade Lee didn't know why he asked that, but the moment the words left his mouth, Mother Lee stiffened slightly, almost instinctively averting her eyes. "Why are you asking about her? What could possibly have happened to her? If she's not coming back, maybe she's finally come to her senses. Have you forgotten how she—" Her voice abruptly stopped. She looked around before lowering her voice and saying, "She shamelessly clung to you, nearly ruining your reputation and future. It's better for everyone if she doesn't come back." Cade Lee, forget about Veerushan. This wedding is of great significance. Even, the Pope himself is personally present. Absolutely no mistakes are allowed, you understand. She denied it so eagerly, as if afraid he might discover something. Cade Lee's Adam's apple bobbed as he closed his eyes briefly, finally uttering just 3 words. "Got it." He turned around, picked up his phone, and headed out. Only for Mother Lee to grab his sleeve. "You got it. So where are you off to now?" "Bathroom." He lowered his head and brushed off Mother Lee's hand. After leaving, he immediately made a phone call. The Vatican has its own intelligence network, more reliable and faster than any other organization. A few minutes later, he received a document, a preliminary list released by an international relief organization that was still under verification. It contained over 20 names. But his eyes instantly locked onto those 3 words. Dr. Shinji Shia, whereabouts unknown. His pupils suddenly constricted as he stared fixedly at that line of text, thinking, this must be a lie. Would someone as selfish, malicious, and inconsiderate as Veerushan really become a Doctors Without Borders volunteer? But then a photo of her in a white lab coat appeared before his eyes, leaving him no room for denial. It was Veerushan. It's that woman, the one who seduced him 99 times, drugged him to climb into his bed, disregarding all ethics and morals. The cicada's chorus was deafening, yet in the height of summer, he felt no warmth at all, only the chilling coldness of his blood. When did she become a Doctors Without Borders volunteer? Why had she never told him? Why had she disappeared for half a month? With his people reporting she was still in Italy, countless questions flooded his mind in an instant. His vision darkening intermittently, he strode toward the lounge. Bang! The door was forcefully pushed open from the outside, and Cade Lee looked at his mother with a frosty expression. Many believers came running at the sound. Mother Lee's face darkened as she sharply demanded, "What are you doing?" "The wedding is about to happen." "Wedding?" Cade Lee repeated softly under his breath. He turned to face Mother Lee and the gathered elders, his usual gentleness and refinement completely gone, replaced only by an icy, unsettling calm. "I have a question to ask." His voice was low, his gaze slowly sweeping over Lee Moo's forcibly composed face and the believers who had once confessed to him but were now avoiding his eyes. "Did you all know already that Veerushan was in trouble, that her name was on that missing persons list?" Silence, in itself, was the clearest answer. Cade Lee felt his mind go blank as the emotions he had desperately tried to suppress came crashing down on him like an avalanche. His eyes reddened as he frantically questioned his mother. "Why didn't you tell me?" Why, for the first time in his life, he lost his composure in front of everyone. A heavy atmosphere spread through the small lounge. After a long silence, Mother Lee took a deep breath, as if making a firm decision. "Everyone, please leave. I need to talk to him." Everyone filed out. And soon, only he and Mother Lee remained in the room. The heavy door closed behind them. Cade Lee's eyes were bloodshot as he gasped heavily. "What else do you want to say?" Seated in her wheelchair, Mother Lee spoke with a choked voice. "Cade, I only want what's best for you. What can you do even if you know? Abandon the wedding. Abandon His Holiness the Pope. Abandon your faith to go after her. She's just your adopted daughter, and she once harbored ill intentions toward you. If you do this, what will others think of you? They will think you're a sinner, that you deserve to die, and all your past efforts and achievements will be erased. I can't watch her drag you down to hell. Cade, you were the one who told Mom. She is your adopted daughter, and for this lifetime, she will only ever be your adopted daughter. She spoke slowly and heavily, like a blunt knife soaring back and forth across Caidley's heart. Calm down and finish the wedding properly. Mother Lee reached out to smooth the wrinkles from his clothes. Don't disappoint the Pope. After all, you're the next cardinal. The blood in his palm dripped down the cross, drop by drop. He looked at the blood on the ground, recalling how the chair had been almost entirely stained with blood after Virushan left that day. Yet she hadn't made a sound, just like when he first brought her home, bearing everything alone. Had she already made a precarious decision back then? Had she already believed, even then, that he would abandon her? Caidley could no longer bear it. He pushed his mother's hand away and said word by word, "The wedding is cancelled, I promised her." He heard his own voice, eerily calm, to protect her for a lifetime. "How could I break my word? Do you want to go to hell?" His mother's sobbing abruptly ceased. Outside the door, the scorching gazes of hundreds of guests bore down. With high-ranking members of the church solemnly standing among them, she forcibly suppressed the shock in her heart, her tone growing sharper. "Axel Lin is the most devout nun in the church. The cardinal himself arranged this marriage for you. Marrying her is your best choice. Your future will." Caidley lifted his gaze to meet hers, his cold eyes like unyielding ice. Lee's mother instantly fell silent. His voice was indifferent, yet carried a resolute determination. "Then let it be hell." Caidley turned and pushed open the door. Outside, the 90-year-old Pope stood clad in solemn vestments, his stern gaze weighing heavily upon him. "Caidley, you are my most valued student. Do not make a mistake. That girl, you can go find her after the wedding." Caidley looked at the elderly man before him and bowed deeply. "I'm sorry, teacher, but I can't wait another moment." Under the stunned gazes of the crowd, he declared word by word, "My engagement with Axel Lin is hereby annulled." The crowd gasped in shock. Had Caidley gone mad? Did he even realize the consequences of his actions? From that moment on, his position in the church could never change again. He was destined to remain a priest for the rest of his life, yet Caidley paid no heed, defying the bewildered gazes of those around him. He declared, "My engagement with Axel Lin is hereby annulled." With long strides, he walked toward the door, the scorching sunlight swallowing him whole. Axel Lin finally snapped out of her daze and stumbled after him in her high heels, blocking his path. Caidley lowered his gaze, his eyes devoid of any warmth, his voice icy. "I'm the one who wronged you." Axel Lin bit her lower lip and finally spoke with determination. "Caidley, I know everything. I'll go with you to find Vera. After all, she left because of me. I share the responsibility too. Besides, husband and wife are one, even if the wedding wasn't completed, in my heart. I've already married you." Caidley silently looked at her for a long time, so long that Axel Lin almost thought he would change his mind, but in the end, he just nodded and said, "Okay." Late at night, the Lee residence. Axel Lin had just changed into her nightgown when the urgent ringtone suddenly blared. Frowning, she glanced at the caller ID on the screen. She muted her phone and silently made her way to the backyard. "What is it?" Her voice was thick with displeasure. A man's icy voice immediately came through the receiver. "Caidley already knows. The promise you made to me. What's the panic?" Axel Lin sneered coldly, his tone laced with detached indifference. "Didn't the news report it? The Medicine Sans Frontiers base was attacked by unidentified armed forces. Multiple casualties. Even if Virushan died, it would be perfectly justified. As long as you keep quiet and I keep quiet, no one will ever know you were the one who killed her. Withholding information is just grounds for dismissal at worst. Don't worry, the helicopter to get you out of the country is already prepared. You can leave tomorrow night." Axel Lin hung up the phone, his heart seething with venomous resentment. This meticulously planned, highly anticipated wedding had been ruined. By a dead woman, no less. "Virushan, you're truly a disaster. You can't even die peacefully. Had I known, I should have made your death more spectacular, perhaps on some addict's bed or at an orgy, to ruin your reputation and see if Caidley would still remember you." She took a deep breath, blocked the number, and when she looked up again, her expression had returned to its usual innocent purity as she walked toward the room. Bang! After just 2 steps, she collided hard with a figure. Axel Lin looked up in terror, and the next second, a piercing scream tore through the night. "Ah, so it was you." Cade Lee stepped closer to her, each word dripping with bone-chilling hatred. "You're the one who did it." Those eyes she once adored were now indescribably cold, as if gazing at a corpse. "Cade Lee, listen, let me explain." Axel Lin instinctively sensed the danger. She swallowed hard, forcing out a few tears. "I can explain. It's not what you heard. Vera couldn't have gone on living anyway. I just wanted to free her." "Free her," Cade Lee said calmly. Then, his slender fingers suddenly tightened, gripping Axel Lin by the neck and lifting her up. Axel Lin's feet left the ground, her face instantly turning a terrifying shade of purple-red, her eyes bulging, tears and saliva streaming uncontrollably down her face. "Lee, Cade," just as her consciousness was about to fade into darkness. Cade Lee suddenly released his grip. Axel Lin collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. As she tried to speak again, excruciating pain shot through her chest, and she vomited a mouthful of blood. Cade Lee's expression showed no change, no twist of anger, no glee of vengeance, not even a furrowed brow, as if he were simply drinking water or eating a meal. "Now, you may begin your confession." He bent down, grabbed Axel Lin's head, and forced her to look up at him. "Do not lie." And none of this reached the land torn apart by war. From the damp, dark depths of the air raid shelter, an elderly man spoke in an incomprehensible language, anxiously pushing a box of grimy biscuits toward Virushan. "I'm not hungry, you go ahead and eat." Virushan pushed the biscuit back, offering a weak smile before slowly moving toward the cave entrance. The blazing sunlight fell on her pale face. Unable to hold on any longer, she let out a muffled groan, bending over in pain as her vision darkened in waves. "So hungry, so hungry, so hungry. I told you, stop giving away your rations." A helpless voice came from above. Virushan looked up, sweat trickling down her temple. "I just have a bad memory," she mumbled. "If you keep handing out your food like this, you won't even need to wait for rescue. Hypoglycemia will take you out first," the senior said irritably, rummaging through his backpack before finally fishing out a fruit candy. He handed it to Virushan and slumped to the ground in exhaustion. "It's been a month. Where's the rescue they promised?" His voice was hoarse, laced with despair. "If this drags on any longer, people are really going to die." Virushan unwrapped the candy and placed the fruit drop in her mouth, tilting her head to gaze at the sky. Even without bombers, the sky remained a dull gray, impossible to wipe clean. Just like the glass the day she left Cade Lee, no matter how much she wiped, it stayed blurred. But surely, his sky must have cleared by now. This troublemaker should stay far away from him, so he'll never be entangled in scandalous affairs again. He and Axel Lin should be married by now. I wonder if they'll have a child next year. What are you spacing out for? Your eyes are all red. The senior noticed her absent-minded expression and, seemingly thinking of something, sighed heavily, regretting it. It's normal to have regrets. Being a Doctors Without Borders member was never a good thing. Go back and withdraw your membership from the organization. Virushan finally snapped out of it. She shook her head slowly, offering a faint smile. "It's precisely because I had regrets that I chose this path to atone. After walking it for so long, it feels like my sins have lightened, and now I have no regrets." As soon as the words fell, the abrupt sound of footsteps in the distance instantly made her pupils contract sharply. She quickly stood up and pushed her senior toward the air raid shelter. "Go." The two had barely taken a few steps before being stopped by several figures clad in black combat uniforms. The man at the forefront had broad shoulders and a narrow waist, with no insignia on him. Not even the mandatory identification tag that soldiers always carry. Virushan's breath hitched as she shielded the senior student behind her, struggling to maintain composure. "We're members of Doctors Without Borders. Neutral, we don't take part in any." Target confirmed. Helicopter extraction at the coordinates in 10 minutes. The man ignored Virushan's words entirely, issuing commands into his headset as if she hadn't spoken. Instead, it was a young man beside him who pulled down his tactical mask and spoke in halting English. "Don't be afraid, help is here." He swiftly pulled out a search and rescue order, the familiar national emblem coming into view. The tightly wound string in Virushan's mind finally loosened. Her vision went black as she collapsed. In the last second before consciousness slipped away, she seemed to hear the man curse. Useless. She didn't know how much time had passed when someone woke her. The once bright smiling young man now had a face covered in blood and grime. "Doctor, save the captain," he shouted, his voice choked with sobs, while beside him, the man's face was deathly pale. His black combat suit almost soaked through with blood. "Captain, pushed me away, took the stray bullet." The boy's voice trembled uncontrollably. "The base is too far, no time left. Doctor, please." The dizziness was instantly suppressed by a surge of adrenaline. Virushan took a deep breath. "Give me a military ration bar." The young man was stunned for a moment, then quickly lowered his head. Virushan shoved the item into his mouth haphazardly, barely chewing before forcing it down his throat. "Medical kit, high-concentration alcohol, and grab a flashlight and headlamp. Light them all up." Her voice suddenly rose sharply, and in the next second, all the soldiers on the plane sprang into action, countless light sources converging on the man. This was Virushan's first time performing emergency treatment on a helicopter. The bumpy floor, the crude environment, the cramped space, yet her expression remained calm all along. Those hands that had trembled from low blood sugar just minutes ago now removed the blood-stained bullet without the slightest quiver. The man's neck veins bulged as he let out a stifled groan. He suddenly looked up, his gaze crashing straight into Virushan's eyes. Virushan's heart skipped a beat as she said hoarsely, "It's almost over. Stop the bleeding. Clean the wound. Suture." Virushan's fingers flew swiftly, and as she cut the final stitch, she collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Gasping for breath, the sound of her heartbeat was deafening, even drowning out the noisy engine roar. "Thank you," the man said hoarsely, his tone complex. "Sorry, I can't tell you my name, but you can call me Raven." Virushan's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she smiled weakly. "Then you can call me Summer, Xia Tian." As Virushan stepped out of the ward, the young Li Wei rushed toward her. She instinctively kept her distance. "Wait, I'm dirty." She was still covered in the patient's vomit, but Li Wei didn't mind at all. "What's the big deal? On the battlefield, plenty of people puke from fear." Though his face still bore traces of youth, he spoke of the battlefield's brutality with unsettling ease. Virushan's brows furrowed slightly. But Li Wei went ahead and grabbed the tie of her smock, deftly untying it with nimble fingers as he grinned and said, "Have dinner with me tonight, won't you? I saw you eating with the captain. Fair's fair." "Right." Thinking of that aloof man, Virushan shook her head helplessly. What kind of dinner was that? It was clearly a mission debrief. Li Wei's eyes lit up, revealing his signature canine teeth as he beamed brightly. "Even better. I was worried I'd have to be the other man." He patted his combat suit. "I even suited up in case the captain decided to throw a punch. Figured I could take a couple more hits this way." Looking at his carefree demeanor, the gloom that had shrouded Virushan's heart finally dissipated. She let out a sudden laugh, reaching out to ruffle Li Wei's hair as she said, "Honestly, how old are you? Do you even know what love is? Wait until you're 18, then we'll talk." "Alright, then you mustn't be with anyone else this summer." "You absolutely must wait for me until I'm 18. Li Wei's eyes shone with an astonishing brightness, brimming with the stubbornness and sincerity unique to youth. Meanwhile, on the other side, Cade Lee finally managed to extract the whole truth from Axel Lin, the most devout nun in the church, framing others, attempted murder, and then hiring a hitman to kill. On the contrary, that so-called born villainous Virushan has never harmed anyone. After confessing everything, Axel Lin threw caution to the wind and finally shed his hypocritical mask. There wasn't a trace of remorse in her eyes, only a chilling fanaticism and obsession. "Everything I did was for your own good. Virushan's very existence is your stain. She tarnishes your purity and brings you shame. I couldn't let her destroy you. That's why I did all this. You can hate me, but deep down you know that if you keep getting entangled with Virushan, everything you have will be lost. Cade Lee, I did it all for you." Her twisted expression was particularly hideous. Cade Lee simply stared, his mind fixated on just two words: excuses. Why should he get to live in a bright future envied by the world, while Virushan must vanish without a trace? In this world, there has never been a principle that tramples on human life so ruthlessly. He kicked Axel Lin's hand away, his tone devoid of any fluctuation, yet sending chills down one's spine. "Now, you can start praying." He looked down at her from above, just as he did with every sinner who confessed to him. Pray that Vera is safe and sound, or else, I promise, you'll regret ever appearing before me. Cade Lee was desperate to find Virushan. To this end, he spared no effort, mobilizing all the Lee family's connections and power, even resorting to borrowing the influence of the church to search for her. Such actions drew much criticism, with many accusing him of neglecting public duty for personal reasons and profaning the Holy Office. But Cade Lee didn't care. He would even be willing to make a deal with the devil if it meant finding Virushan. Yet, every time he sent people out, they returned with the same message. Despite his lifelong connections and the power of being the Lee family heir, the reports remained unchanged. The base was bombed, no remains found. The bombing zone has been repeatedly searched, no signs of life. Her name is on the missing list. Chances of survival, extremely low. Cade Lee refused to believe it. He refused to believe that the stubborn, vibrant girl who had loved him with her entire life could have died just like that. She must be alive somewhere, waiting for him to bring her home. Just like the day they first met, after yet another disappointing reply, Cade Lee boarded a plane alone to her last known location. The Doctors Without Borders outpost in Country X, Africa. The plane landed, and he immediately boarded an off-road vehicle sent by the local military, speeding away. 4 hours later, the car came to a slow stop, and Cade Lee pushed open the door, frozen in place. Before him, it was less of a military outpost and more like a massive graveyard, with ruins destroyed by artillery fire and scattered limbs everywhere. No wonder, everyone said she was dead. How could anyone possibly survive such bombing? Cade Lee staggered a step, and the soldier beside him immediately reached out to steady him, only to be roughly pushed away. Trembling, he walked forward, with every step. He couldn't help but think, she used to be afraid even of nightmares. How terrified must she have been when she heard the gunfire? He still remembered. Whenever he stayed late at the church, the light at home would always be on when he returned. Pushing open the door, he would see that petite figure curled up on the sofa. He always sighed helplessly, picking her up with an unconscious tenderness he himself hadn't noticed. And she, half asleep, would always mumble, "Good night." Mother Lee had reminded him many times to keep his distance. After all, Virushan was still a girl. Yet every time, he would answer without hesitation, "I only see her as family." There was a 10-year age gap between them. He had practically watched her grow from a skinny little girl into a graceful young woman. Over the years, he had always been her godfather, which convinced him he would never develop feelings for her, even if an occasional strange emotion flickered through his heart. He never dwelled on it, but now, as he stared at the scorched earth before him, a belated regret, sharp as a blade, twisted violently in his chest. The agony made him clutch his cross instantly, his knuckles turning white from the force. He didn't understand why it hurt so much, only that the pain was unbearable, as if something had died before it could even sprout. He bent over in agony, his suppressed tears falling onto the scorched earth, vanishing without a trace. Just then, his phone suddenly rang violently. Dazed, he meant to hang up but accidentally answered instead. "Father Lee, we've found Miss Shin. She's in the desert." Inside the temporary field hospital tent, Virushan was debriding a newly arrived wounded soldier. Li Wei crouched beside her, handing over instruments while continuously observing her. After a moment, he couldn't hold back any longer and spoke in a very low voice, with a hint of pleading. "Xie Tian, are you leaving, mm?" Virushan didn't look up. Half a month had passed, and the organization had finally completed all procedures to arrange their return home. Li Wei's eyes instantly reddened. "Can't you just stay? The war is almost over. Stay nearby, or even at the base would be fine. You're so good. The captain wouldn't want you to leave either." Virushan didn't pause for a second as she wrapped the bandage around, her tone resolute. "No, Li Wei, there are still many places waiting for people like me. Just like you were." The senior helping her gave her a complicated look but said nothing, until Levi couldn't hold it in any longer and ran off with a sob. He finally spoke. "Look how you've broken that kid's heart. He'll probably cry all night." Virushan smiled. "As you said, he's just a kid. What he likes changes quickly, and what he dislikes fades just as fast. What about Crow? He's so busy, yet he still found time to personally escort the medicine for you. Even his ever-present gun. He let you touch it." "You've misunderstood. Crow was just thanking us for our help. that's all," Virushan spoke calmly, but her expression was slightly unnatural. Fortunately, her senior didn't notice. He said in a joking tone, "Hey, you're not planning to spend your whole life with Doctors Without Borders, are you?" His voice carried a hint of concern. After all, Virushan was his junior and also his best friend. "Why not?" She arched her brows. Her smile so faint it was almost imperceptible. "It's a great and glorious cause. After all." Virushan straightened up, signaling that the injured person could leave now, then removed her gloves. The senior sighed, patted her on the shoulder, and said, "All right, I won't watch the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony without you." Virushan was amused by him. The two exchanged a silent glance, and after a pause, she finally spoke. "Actually, a long time ago, I liked someone, so much that it drove me crazy. I did many wrong things for him. Later, after learning a painful lesson, I realized that wasn't love, it was just loneliness, just unwillingness to accept defeat." She spoke these words softly, yet to her senior, they struck like thunder. He asked in disbelief, "Who? We've known each other for almost 6 years. How come you've never mentioned this before?" Virushan's eyelashes fluttered as she lowered her gaze to her fingertips, remaining silent, just when the senior thought she wouldn't speak. She slowly said, "Someone who can't be mentioned, but it's all in the past now. That person was her godfather, the one who raised her. To even mention him would be wrong." Fortunately, she had let go. The tragic ending of her past life made her realize that love is about letting go, not possession. The crow looked at the girl inside, silently withdrew its hand, and left. After packing up her things, Virushan sat alone on the rooftop, lost in thought, gazing at the starry sky. She suddenly recalled a saying, "We all look up at the same stars," but she wondered, would the stars be just as bright where Cade Lee was? Would Axel Lin be there to watch them with him? Without her in his life, he must have found happiness by now, right? She desperately wanted an answer, but not disturbing him was the last thing she could do for Cade Lee. Just 200 kilometers outside the camp, in the desert region, Cade Lee finished the last sip of water and collapsed weakly on the sand dune. The vast starry sky lit up his eyes but failed to guide him to any direction. At this moment, he finally admitted that perhaps he would never find Virushan. He was going to die. 15 days had passed since Cade Lee arrived in this desert, time and again. He came up empty-handed, time and again. He was met with disappointment. Cade Lee found no trace of Virushan's presence anywhere. After venturing deeper into even more dangerous territory, he lost his bearings. Even the signal from his satellite phone vanished completely. The stars before his eyes grew increasingly blurred, and memories of the past flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern. He remembered Virushan kneeling naked at his feet, her eyes red with emotion. He remembered her desperately trying to explain the video to him, while he was preoccupied with comforting Axel Lin, even driving her away. When the very next day was her birthday, even after she personally saved Axel Lin, who had wanted to kill her, he still doubted her. The whiplashes had torn open her back, and with her hands still bandaged, he had dragged her to the hospital. Cade Lee clutched his chest tightly, but the gesture brought him no relief at all. That heart seemed to have shattered into countless pieces, each one asking him, how could he bear it? He had clearly told her, "Don't worry, I'll protect you for a lifetime, and never let you cry again." How could he have forgotten it all? "Vera," Cade Lee's parched lips trembled, his voice hoarse, "I'm sorry." The world before his eyes gradually faded to gray. With all his remaining strength, he struggled to pull a Bible from his inner pocket, without hesitation. Cade Lee bit his fingertip until it bled. The sharp pain came, but it was nothing compared to the heartache carried by the wings of the evening breeze. Trembling, he used his bleeding finger to painstakingly write his final words on the Bible, stroke by stroke. "All my inheritance is to be left to Virushan. After finding her, please do not tell her of my death. I owe her too much. Don't let her shed tears for me again." Cade Lee, he tried his best to write clearly, but his fingers refused to obey. His consciousness grew increasingly hazy, and in his daze, he suddenly remembered that year when he was 8 years old, he encountered a little lamb on the farm, and he liked it so much that he wanted to take it home as a pet. But that very night, the lamb became his dinner. His mother said, "Black goats are the embodiment of the devil. I won't allow you to be tempted by it." Any deviation from the sacred path would be precisely strangled by his mother in the name of doing what's best for him. He no longer dared to cross the line, nor to defy dogma. Even the deepest desires of Cade Lee within his heart were ruthlessly suppressed. Thus, he became the Pope's most favored student, the chosen successor to the cardinal. The path his mother chose was never wrong, and everyone, after all, was doing what was best for him. He had no right to blame his mother, nor could he blame the judgmental eyes of the world. If there was anyone to blame, it was himself for pushing Virushan away. Was it because she fell in love with him? No, he allowed the disdain of those around her, turned a blind eye to the harm she suffered, and even drove her away. All out of fear, he feared that Virushan's reckless, unconditional love would shake his resolve, make him err, and cause him to lose control. That was why Cade Lee agreed to the red-robed great priest's arrangement of a marriage contract between himself and Axel Lin. But now, he was no longer afraid. If the path to her inevitably led through hell first, then so be it. As long as Virushan can be happy, he is willing to bear all the sin and punishment. It was unclear how much time had passed. Perhaps a day, or maybe just a few minutes. In the chaotic world, a familiar voice suddenly emerged. "What did you want to talk to me about?" The voice, muffled by the curtain, sounded somewhat distant, but the remnants of Cade Lee's consciousness almost instantly recognized it. It was Virushan, her voice. His eyelids trembled violently, as if they would open the next second. "Shun, Vera." His parched throat barely managed to force out a cry. With bloodshot eyes, Cade Lee rose, ready to rush out. "Don't move, you're still on an 4-drip. The nurse beside him reacted swiftly, pressing him back onto the bed with one hand. Outside the tent, Virushan froze for a moment. Was that Cade Lee's voice just now? How could that be? He should be in the Vatican, Jerusalem, anywhere but this desert outpost. She shook her head to dismiss the absurd thought and turned to Li Wei. "Why so quiet?" Li Wei mustered his courage to look at her, his tone filled with reluctance. "After you go back, can you write to me?" Virushan nodded. Just then, the crow strode out from the tent nearby. The man, still clad in his black combat uniform, spoke without a trace of emotion. "Li Wei, it's time for your training." "Yes, Captain." Li Wei took one last glance at Virushan before jogging away. Virushan nodded at Crow and turned to continue packing, but suddenly a large hand gripped her wrist. "Is something wrong?" She looked up at Crow in confusion. Crow stood with his hands behind his back, his thin lips pressed tightly together. She wasn't sure if she was imagining it, but he seemed oddly tense. His Adam's apple bobbed a few times before he finally produced a bouquet of roses wrapped in newspaper from behind his back. In this war-torn desert, roses are far rarer than drugs. Virushan looked at the bouquet with mixed emotions. "I can't accept this." "Take it." The crow unwaveringly shoved the flowers into her arms. "No pressure. I know you won't stay." A flicker of regret passed through his usually calm and indifferent eyes as he spoke hoarsely. "I just hope that when you look back on this place someday, it won't just be gunfire and yellow sand you remember, but also a bouquet of roses." Virushan's heart trembled. When they first met, the impression Crow gave her was that of a cold and ruthless war machine. But after spending this time together, she remembered the brown sugar wrapped in paper on the windowsill when she had menstrual cramps, how Crow had set aside his gun to teach her how to protect herself, and how this man had told her that this was his last battle. He wanted to live long enough to see Virushan's hometown. The scales in her heart swayed violently. Suddenly, she felt that perhaps she really should try to move forward. Virushan took a deep breath and accepted the bouquet of roses that still carried his warmth. At that moment, hurried and chaotic footsteps echoed from behind her. It must be Li Wei, right? He'd probably be angry that she rejected him but accepted Crow. A pang of guilt flickered through Virushan, but it didn't shake her resolve. She had always been this way. Once a decision was made, there was no turning back. The setting sun stretched their shadows long across the ground. Virushan held the roses and stepped forward, embracing the rigid body of the crow with force. She stood on tiptoe, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, "My name isn't Summer, it's Virushan. When the war is over, I'll wait for you to come see me." The crow's calm pupils suddenly trembled. He lowered his head in disbelief, gazing into the girl's earnest eyes before him. All restraint crumbled in that moment as he bent down and kissed her fiercely, and this scene slipped through the gap in the tent's entrance, falling entirely into a pair of furious eyes. For 3 whole months, he neither slept nor rested, nearly losing his life before finally finding Virushan. He had imagined countless scenarios of their reunion, but none included this one. Watching her in another man's arms, locked in a passionate kiss, rage instantly burned away all his reason and restraint. Cade Lee yanked out his 4-needle, blood gushing from the puncture, yet he felt nothing as he swung his fist with full force at the man kissing Virushan. The crow reacted swiftly, immediately wrapping his arm around Virushan's waist and turning to shield her completely behind him. At the same time, he kicked backward, sending Cade Lee flying several meters away. In the past, Cade Lee might have scrambled to his feet immediately, but now he was in no condition to do so. Left sprawled on the ground in a sorry state, under the scorching sun, the crow looked down at the man before him, his tone icy, looking for death. Virushan patted the crow's arm, about to say, "Don't be so harsh on the kid," when her gaze froze the moment she clearly saw the person on the ground. "Cade Lee, what are you doing here?" The crow's gaze swept between her and Cade Lee. "You know each other." Her heart pounded like a drum, her tone carrying a hint of unnaturalness. "He's my godfather, Cade Lee." A trace of embarrassment flashed across Crow's face. He had just punched his future father-in-law at their first meeting. He reached out to help Cade Lee up, but Cade Lee was only staring at Virushan, suppressing his anger as he asked her, "Godfather, Virushan, am I just your godfather?" The suppressed emotions were stirring at this moment. He thought wildly, almost blurting out, "When you were in my bed, you never called me that." "Yes." Virushan finally calmed down, answering indifferently without a trace of emotion on her face. She didn't want to delve into the reason for Cade Lee's arrival, nor was it necessary to do so. From the moment of her rebirth, leaving him had already been her only answer. A subtle expression appeared on Crow's typically unchanging face. But he asked nothing, still standing between the two, while Virushan continued to hold his hand, watching their actions. Cade Lee was instantly consumed by jealousy. Propping himself up with his arms, he struggled to rise from the sandy ground. "Virushan, if you consider me your godfather, why would you write such things in your diary?" He pulled out a half-burned piece of paper from his chest and held it up between them. Virushan's pupils contracted sharply. She couldn't believe that Cade Lee would produce her long-burned diary in a place like this. "Are you insane?" Her voice trembled. "How could you?" "Perhaps." A bleak smile curled at the corner of Cade Lee's lips, his black priest's robe covered in dust. "Perhaps I lost my mind the moment I was on the brink of death. To hell with doctrines. To hell with worldly judgments. I don't care about any of it. I only want you. I'll take you back. I want you to be my wife." He reached out his hand to her. "Come with me. Isn't this what you've always longed for?" "I gave up long ago." Virushan trembled all over, her eyes still filled with defiance. "I won't go back with you, father." Each utterance of father pierced Cade Lee's heart like a thorn, driving deeper with every word. She was reminding him that she didn't want him anymore. The string in his mind snapped with a pop, leaving Cade Lee with only one thought: he would take her home, as long as he kept her by his side. Sooner or later, she would change her mind. He lunged at Virushan recklessly once more, only to hear the crisp sound of a gun being cocked beside his ear, its barrel pointed straight at his forehead. The crow remarked nonchalantly, "Here, killing someone is easier than taking a sip of water. Don't move." Cade Lee's footsteps halted. Then he suddenly laughed with a reckless madness. "Go ahead, shoot." As long as he fired the gun, Virushan, being a doctor, would never ignore him. Watching the scene unfold before her, Virushan's heart sank. She didn't want to continue arguing with Cade Lee in public, so she quickly exchanged a glance with Crow. Crow gave a slight nod and, staring at Cade Lee, said gravely, "Virushan is a living person, not someone's possession. If you truly love her, you should first learn to respect her choices, not humiliate her." Before the words even faded, a swift chop landed on Cade Lee's neck, instantly causing him to collapse. Crow handed him over to the approaching nurses. "He seems to be a priest. Contact the church to come get him." After finishing all this, he turned to look at Virushan and smiled. "Let's go, it's time to take care of the roses." On the way back, Crow remained silent. But perhaps because the two had just confirmed their relationship, Virushin's mood was somewhat complicated. After pondering for a long time, she finally mustered the courage and asked in a trembling voice. "About what happened earlier, don't you want to ask me?" Crow's footsteps didn't stop as he calmly turned to look at her. "I do." Her fingers trembled slightly, and a hint of struggle flashed in her eyes. Crow sighed. "But you don't want to talk about it. Your will," his voice was low and resolute, "is the highest command to me. So, I won't ask anything." The desert wind tousled his hair as he gazed deeply at the slender girl before him, who never knew how to admit defeat. After a long silence, he finally spoke slowly. "Have you set the date for leaving? I'll see you off." Virushin saw the reluctance in his eyes and suddenly felt a pang of regret. She had stayed at the camp for 2 whole months, yet remained trapped in the past, unable to move forward. It had taken all her courage to make this decision. And now, in just 7 days, she would be gone. War is merciless, and the future is unpredictable. No one could say when they might meet again. She pursed her dry lips, trying to suppress the reluctance in her heart. "It's settled. A helicopter will be arranged for evacuation next Friday." The crow gently touched the corner of her eye. "Don't be sad. This time, I'll see you off. Next time, will you come to pick me up?" "Okay." Virushin threw herself into his arms. The distant sunset bled like crimson, yet neither of them realized this would be their last embrace in life. As the time for departure approaches, the two of them don't want to be apart for even a moment. Crow took annual leave and spent almost every waking moment by Virushin's side. Their feelings for each other grew rapidly, as if trying to make up for the 2 months they had missed. Even during group meals, his attention remained fixed on Virushin. One moment he was opening a can for her. The next he was mixing water for her, so attentive that no one would guess he was a decisive and ruthless mercenary. Virushin's cheeks burned with warmth. Although the crow had already been quite attentive to her before, now it was practically spoiling her like a child. After being adopted by Cade Lee, he had once doted on her excessively, so much so that she had never even peeled her own shrimp growing up. But as she grew a little older, Cade Lee deliberately kept his distance, reminding her that she was no longer a child, not to mention after Axel Lin became engaged to him. Cade Lee's attitude toward her, everyone was secretly watching the two of them. Virushin bit her lip but still accepted the steak Cade Lee had cut for her, watching Virushin's flushed face. The senior's expression grew even more complicated, while Li Wei was so angry he couldn't eat and stormed off to the training field. After dinner, the two of them took a walk together around the camp. There were only 72 hours left before she had to leave, but she didn't know how to bring it up. Her reluctance and dilemma were noticed by the crow, who chuckled softly and pulled her into his embrace. "Don't be sad, there are still 72 hours left. There's still so much we can do, right, Doctor?" Meanwhile, Cade Lee, who had been taken by the church, found himself in chaos. He had clearly called off the engagement, yet Axel Lin showed up at his house visibly pregnant. Not only did Mrs. Lee not kick her out, but she also kept spreading the word that he was still in the Vatican and that his relationship with Axel Lin remained stable. "I'm doing this for your own good. Only this way can you avoid being dismissed by the church." Looking at his mother's hypocritical expression, Cade Lee felt nothing but disgust. He had had enough of bowing to power. Make Axel Lin abort the child and get out. "Cade, I know you love Virushin. After all, you're my only child. And I don't want this to drive us apart, but what you're doing is sinful. You must not bring a child into this world. Axel Lin's child will be yours, and this way, I won't have to worry about you growing old alone." Her words were cut off by Cade Lee's low, chilling laughter. He raised his head, his gaze icy and piercing. "So, in your eyes, attempted murder and premarital pregnancy don't count as sins? Stop talking, you disgust me." With that, he shoved Mother Lee's hand away and grabbed Axel Lin's wrist. "Will you go for the abortion yourself, or shall I take you?" Axel Lin turned deathly pale, tears welling up in her eyes. "Cade Lee, I'm a nun. How could you force me to do this?" Cade Lee smirked. "Fine, it seems you've chosen for me to help you. That works. Saves Vera from misunderstanding anyway." He dragged Axel Lin out relentlessly as she struggled desperately, her face drenched in tears. "Cade Lee, no, no, if I go to the hospital, my reputation will be ruined. They will know this child isn't yours." and my nunhood will be revoked. Cade Lee had no idea what she had sacrificed to marry him. She climbed into the bed of the cardinal to secure the engagement, to stay in the Lee family. She even faked a pregnancy to cover for Cade Lee. If the child were born, she would become the most powerful Madam Lee in the church. But if not, she had agreed to Mother Lee's demands just to remain in the Lee family. As long as the child was born safely, she would still have a way out. This was her last hope, and she would never let go. But Cade Lee didn't care. He had already broken Virushan's heart. If he still wanted to win her back, he must never have anything to do with Axel Lin again. Not even a child bearing the Lee family name. Mrs. Lee finally snapped to her senses and lunged at Cade Lee, but none of them could stop him. All she could do was scream, "Bodyguards, stop him!" The bodyguards in black suits swarmed in and finally managed to wrest Axel Lin from Cade Lee's grasp. Even Mrs. Lee's meticulously styled hair was now disheveled. Panting heavily, she said, "Cade Lee, either you let Axel Lin keep this child, or, how about I die instead?" Cade Lee stood his ground, yanking the cross from his chest and pressing its sharp end firmly against his carotid artery. Yet, he still found the mood to smirk, other than Virushan. "I won't let anyone bear my child, not even if they just borrow my name." Mrs. Lee stared fixedly at his hand, breathing heavily in frustration. She couldn't understand how her once obedient son had turned into this. How did he manage to break free from her control? After a long, silent standoff between mother and son, Mrs. Lee finally raised her hand. "Cade Lee, from now on, you are no longer my son." With that, she refused to look at anyone else and left with her bodyguards. Cade Lee, expressionless, dragged Axel Lin straight to the hospital. Axel Lin struggled and resisted, covered in blood, but still couldn't match Cade Lee's strength. "Doctor, help me. I don't want to lose my child." Even as she lay on the operating table, she refused to give up, but the only response was an anesthetic injection. Gradually, she lost control of her limbs and fell unconscious. When she woke up again, her lower abdomen was empty, leaving only waves of dull pain. "The child is gone." Cade Lee still wouldn't let her go, reporting everything to the church's Department of Supervision. The department listed her charges one by one, stripped her of all positions, and sentenced her to lifelong confinement in a convent. 2 clear tears rolled down Axel Lin's cheeks. Struggling to her feet, she raised her voice sharply. "I confess, I admit all my sins. But I must report, Father Cade Lee abused his authority, forced me to abort, and engaged in an illicit relationship with his own adopted daughter. He has desecrated his holy office and tarnished the sacred name." Her life was ruined, so why could Cade Lee still stand gloriously on the sacred altar? She would drag him down into the abyss with her. The tip-off quickly took effect. Just as Cade Lee had tracked down Virushan's current address and was about to head over, he was stopped at his doorstep by members of the Divine Sect. The leader played a clear recording without hesitation, then coldly declared. The leader of the Divine Sect remained expressionless, directly playing a clear recording. Father Cade Lee, having abused his authority to coerce others into violating religious doctrines, with irrefutable evidence, henceforth, all holy orders are revoked, and 30 lashes shall be administered as a warning to others. Cade Lee silently removed the priestly robe symbolizing his status, offering not a single word in his own defense. Before the punishment was carried out, someone couldn't help but ask, "Was it worth it? You could have become a respected cardinal." Cade Lee did not answer. Everyone has their own path they wish to walk, but without Virushan, that path would be utterly meaningless. 30 lashes, each soaked in salt water, came down mercilessly. Cade Lee clenched his teeth, not uttering a single plea for mercy. By the time the punishment ended, his white shirt was in tatters, dripping with blood. Gritting through the excruciating pain, he staggered to his feet and stumbled toward the exit, still clutching a ticket to Florence in his hand. "You must survive." Virushan stood before the helicopter about to take off, her eyes reddening at the corners. Reluctantly, she glanced at Crow and Levi one last time before resolutely turning away and boarding the aircraft. Each of them had their own mission to fulfill. A day later, Virushan arrived at the residence arranged by the organization for its members. The next day, she went with her senior to report, and by the time it was over, the sky was already pitch black. Exhausted, She returned home and was about to close the door, when a hand suddenly reached out from the side, firmly blocking the door gap. It was actually Cade Lee, who had been taken away by the church earlier. Virushan frowned and said, "Godfather, you shouldn't have come to me." As soon as the words fell, Cade Lee collapsed forward, and Virushan instinctively reached out to catch him. An intense, pungent smell of blood instantly flooded her nostrils. She hurriedly helped him back home, where the bandages on Cade Lee's body were already soaked through with blood. Virushan immediately cleaned and redressed his wounds. After giving him anti-inflammatory medication, she stayed awake nearly all night, fearing he might develop a fever. Only when dawn broke did she finally close her eyes, utterly exhausted. After fainting, Cade Lee had a long dream in which he and Virushan still ended up intimately involved. However, faced with his mother's disappointment and the disdain of the believers, he retreated, never daring to confess his love for Virushan. Thus, although the two were married, he refused to even glance at her. At first, Virushan tried to wait for his acceptance. But day after day of neglect eventually drove her nearly mad. He desperately wanted to shout, to tell her, "Actually, I love you too, I'm sorry," but the self in the dream turned away coldly, speaking with biting scorn. "When you committed those wrongs, you should have foreseen this day. I will never accept you, nor will I ever love you." Once again, Virushan drugged him, and to resist the urge, he stabbed himself with a cross. As the blood gushed out, he saw the last glimmer of light in Virushan's eyes extinguish. That heart which had loved him was finally dead. She neither cried nor made a fuss, no longer approached, visibly thinning before one's eyes. Cade Lee felt as if his heart were being torn apart, desperately trying to hold her in his dreams, to make amends, yet utterly powerless to do anything, until the final day, when the earth shook violently, and Virushan was struck by a boulder on her leg, leaving her immobile. He felt an unprecedented rage and despair, questioning the God he had believed in all his life. Why punish the innocent? It was me. I wasn't firm enough in my refusal. I couldn't accept things honestly. I drove her to despair. I'm the one who should be punished. Cade Lee's heart shattered, tears of blood streaming from his eyes. In that moment, he finally seized control of the dream for an instant. He threw himself onto Virushan, using his body to shield her and create the last space for survival. In the final moment, his blood dripped onto Virushan's eyelid. "Virushan, you are my sin and my punishment. At last, my debt is paid. If only we hadn't adopted you back then, how much better it would have been. That way, they could have loved each other openly, without having to worry about anyone else." When he opened his eyes again, it took him a long moment to come back to himself. Beside him, Virushan was sleeping restlessly, her brows still furrowed. An indescribable ache welled up in his heart. He reached out, gently smoothing the furrow between her brows. As a tear fell onto the back of her hand, Virushan's eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her eyes. Upon recognizing the person before her, she immediately sat up and moved away, calling out, "Godfather." Her tone was reverent. Those eyes that had once loved him for a lifetime in dreams now held nothing but respect. Cade Lee clenched his palms tightly, trying to hold back his wretchedness, but tears kept falling uncontrollably. Virushan silently handed him a tissue. After a moment of hesitation, she finally asked, "Does the wound hurt? Do you need painkillers?" Hearing the concern in her voice, Cade Lee felt a pang of bitterness in his chest. "I'm sorry." His voice was hoarse, his words fragmented. "I was weak, selfish, to avoid making mistakes. I repeatedly hurt the person I love most, turned a blind eye to her, let her suffer, nearly cost her life." Just confessing to Virushan had already tormented him unbearably. As for Virushan, who had to accept all this and leave, the pain she endured was something he couldn't even begin to imagine. Virushan gave him a complicated look. "What happened back then? We were both at fault. It's all in the past now." "No." Cade Lee grabbed her wrist urgently. "Axel Lin has been stripped of her nunhood and confined for life. And as the main culprit, I've severed ties with the Lee family and been cast out by the church." She looked at Cade Lee in astonishment. In her past life, until death, Cade Lee had failed to become a cardinal of the Red Robe because of her. In this new life, they were no longer connected. So why? As if he knew what she was thinking, Cade Lee forced a bitter smile and said, "I won't let anyone who hurts you go unpunished." So that includes myself, but can you give me one more chance to make things right? Vera, let me spend the rest of my life protecting you. Virushan looked at the battered man before her and shook her head. I once swore to God that I would never again harbor any impure thoughts toward Father Cade Lee. If I break this oath, may I die a wretched death. Cade Lee urgently interrupted. If there is any punishment to bear, let it fall on me. It was I who tempted you. God will forgive you. All the guilt is mine. Yet Virushan remained unshaken. With unwavering resolve, she pried the man's fingers open one by one, then stood and bowed. You are my godfather, and that is all you will ever be to me. I will pretend I never heard these words. Get some rest. Cade Lee shook his head desperately, unwilling to accept it no matter what. Just then, Virushan's phone rang. Without even glancing at Cade Lee, she answered the call, her tone instantly softening to an incredibly gentle level. Yes, I'm at home, of course I miss you. The corners of her lips curled up involuntarily, and the tenderness in her eyes was a stark contrast to how she had just faced Cade Lee. This sharp contrast stabbed painfully into Cade Lee's eyes, staggering. He walked up behind Virushan and wrapped his arms around her waist, licking her earlobe with his tongue. Ouch! Virushan gasped in surprise, immediately alerting the crow, who asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just bit my tongue." She forced herself to stay calm, trying hard to pull away from Cade Lee's restraining arms, only to be held even tighter by him. His scorching breath brushed against her neck as Cade Lee's hoarse voice dripped with possessiveness. "What does he amount to? I raised you. Every inch of you belongs to me." Virushan was instantly horrified. She hastily hung up the phone and struggled to break free from his grip, her voice rising sharply. "Cade Lee, what exactly do you want? Don't forget, it was you who made me swear, and you who told me to stay away from you. I've done it all. So what madness is this now?" Cade Lee step by step backed her into a corner. "I regret it now. I don't want to confess to God anymore. I just want," he let out a low laugh, his tone mad and obsessive, "to have fun with you in hell." He wanted Virushan to always look at him, to stay by his side, even if it meant eternal damnation. With that, his nimble fingers deftly unbuttoned the front of Virushan's blouse, pressing his scorching touch against her delicate skin, the searing sensation like flames. She couldn't help but recall that chaotic night, the way Cade Lee forced the cross into her mouth, his eyes red at the corners. "See, your body still remembers me." Cade Lee's voice took on a seductive edge as he leaned down to kiss her. Virushan jolted awake and yanked his hair hard. He groaned in pain but refused to retreat. Left with no choice, Virushan pressed hard on the wound on his back. The searing pain instantly sapped his strength, sending him collapsing to the ground. Virushan quickly stepped back, her chest heaving rapidly, her usually cold cheeks finally flushed with anger. "Cade Lee, enough, don't keep making mistakes." Cade Lee lay on the ground, his blood staining the carpet, yet he seemed oblivious to the pain as he gazed at her with a smile. "No, now is the right time. Do you know? While I was unconscious, I had a dream. In that dream, we got married. But I treated you poorly. I think that dream was reminding me not to let you go, to treat you twice as well." Virushan was suddenly startled. Wasn't Cade Lee referring to their past lives? But as she carefully observed Cade Lee's expression, it seemed he only regarded it as a dream. Virushan closed her eyes briefly, took a deep breath, and finally made up her mind. That wasn't a dream, it was our past lives. Under Cade Lee's stunned gaze, she calmly recounted everything that had happened in their previous lives, from the adoption, to the forbidden love, to the forced marriage, and finally to the tragic ending. In the end, she said quietly, "After the marriage, you were never happy. You regretted it until the day you died. Now, I don't want to repeat that mistake." "No," Cade Lee quickly defended himself. "In the end, I regretted it, regretted treating you that way. Regretted not seeing my own heart sooner, regretted not protecting you." "Too late." Virushan paused, then looked down at the only photo she had with the crow on her phone, her tone resolute. "We're like two trains heading in opposite directions. When I loved you, you didn't love me. Now that you love me, I already have a new passenger. Trains can't turn back, and neither can I, after everything that's happened. Cade Lee, I've lost the ability to love you." She looked down at him, her eyes filled with exhaustion. "If you still feel even a shred of remorse for me, then go live your life well." That is the meaning of my atonement." After saying these words, she grabbed her keys and left the apartment without looking back. Virushan didn't see that the moment she closed the door, Cade Lee's eyes suddenly turned bloodshot. Sitting on the floor, he muttered to himself, "Impossible. I won't let you go. Even if we die, we'll die together." Virushan was about to leave when she opened the door and found Cade Lee standing there once again, dressed in a sharp custom-tailored suit, looking refined and gentlemanly. He was holding a bag of breakfast. "I thought you probably hadn't eaten yet." Virushan frowned. "I don't need it. You have low blood sugar." Cade Lee smiled. "Don't worry, it's just breakfast. You're not afraid you'll soften up and refuse, are you?" Virushan had no choice but to accept. After that, Cade Lee would bring her breakfast every day. If she didn't open the door, he would wait outside all day. She had to report to the organization early, but after reporting, Cade Lee was waiting for her downstairs. His flawless features were enough to captivate most women, with one approach after another. And each time he would say, "Sorry, I can't give you my number. I don't want the one I love to misunderstand." Fortunately, Virushan soon took on a new assignment and left. She had just breathed a sigh of relief when, upon arrival, she discovered Cade Lee was also in the area, dressed in a white shirt and holding a cross. He was patiently offering guidance to others. When he saw her arrive, his eyes curved into a smile, radiant and pure. "This is the one I love, a great doctor." Virushan was utterly exhausted. After completing her mission and returning to Florence once again, she arranged to meet Cade Lee, this time, no matter what she had to say. She was determined to keep Cade Lee away from her. She had just sat down at the restaurant when she noticed an adorable cat figurine at the front desk. She snapped a photo and sent it to Cade Lee. As she was about to put her phone away, a breaking news alert flashed on the TV. Conflict escalates in Yuanbang. Peacekeeping force camp attacked by large-scale armed militants. Heavy casualties reported. Communications down. Her phone slipped from her hand. Staring blankly at the blurred images on the news, she felt her breath catch in her throat. That was precisely the location where Crow and Levi were stationed. She abruptly picked up her phone, her grip so tight her knuckles turned white. "This is Virushan. I request immediate return to the Farland outpost. I'm familiar with the area." After hanging up, Virushan hurried toward her apartment, only to collide with Cade Lee as she stepped outside. Cade Lee was about to ask where she was going when he looked down and saw her tear-streaked face. His expression darkened, but in the end, he simply said, "I'll drive you." A day later, Virushan returned to the Farland outpost with the first rescue team. The scene before them was like a living hell, crowded with wounded everywhere, even the wind carrying a heavy scent of blood. Crying, moaning, and death were happening every moment. Virushan's heart tightened. Forcing herself to stay composed, she immediately put on a rescue vest and rushed to the nearest person, with Cade Lee silently following behind, watching Vera weave through the injured. He tried to help but only ended up causing more trouble. As he watched Vera run off again, a faint sense of helplessness welled up in his heart. At this very moment, it's not a god who can save these people, only a doctor. Summer. Summer. Virushan suddenly heard someone calling her codename and immediately turned to look. A soldier was shouting hoarsely, "Save Levi." When her gaze fell on the person in his arms, her pupils constricted sharply. She rushed over immediately, pressing both hands firmly against the wound on his abdomen. But warm blood continued to seep through her fingers. "Li Wei, it's me, I'm back." Her tears fell onto Li Wei's ashen face. "I will save you, don't give up." Hearing the familiar voice, a faint glimmer returned to Li Wei's unfocused pupils. His lips moved slightly, but his voice was too weak to be heard. Virushan immediately leaned down, bringing her ear close to his lips, and heard him say word by word, "Xie Tian, I won't make it to 18. No." Virushan's voice trembled uncontrollably. "Just hold on a little longer. The blood bags will be here soon, and the defibrillator." Rescue principles. Li Wei coughed twice, blood splattering on Virushan's cheek. "Abandon those with severe injuries." He wanted her to let go and save those who were more likely to survive. "No, no." Virushan shook her head desperately, screaming heartbreakingly, "Where are the blood bags? Where are the blood bags?" No matter how hard she tried, the light in the young boy's eyes under her care still faded away bit by bit. "After you go back, can you write to me?" Don't be with anyone else in the summer. You must wait for me until I'm 18. Can't you just not go? The war is almost over. Don't be afraid. Help is here." In her memory, the young man revealed two sharp little canine teeth, smiling with unbridled confidence. Virushin let go in despair. She slowly closed Levi's eyes, then stood up and strode forward, in the face of life and death. A doctor has no right to weep for anyone. She must stay strong to save more lives. The walkie-talkie pinned to her chest crackled with a hoarse voice. "East District Lighthouse. Crow is trapped there. Possible biochemical weapon. Rescue and medical teams. Suit up in protective gear and move out immediately." Virushin's eyes burned with determination. Summer copies. She donned the heavy hazmat suit and followed the others into the lighthouse. The structure here was severely damaged. Crow was the last survivor found, lying unconscious in a pool of blood. Were it not for the faint rise and fall of his chest, he could almost be declared dead. Crow. With permission granted, Virushin immediately rushed over. Crow's pulse was weak, his breathing rapid, and his body temperature abnormally high. What shocked her even more were the large patches of abnormal purplish-red bruises appearing on his exposed skin. Her heart sank, and she immediately shouted to those behind her. "Viral infection, highly suspected to be MFB, seal the entrance, everyone get out. This virus has an extremely high fatality rate and is highly contagious." "Summer. What about you?" a familiar soldier shouted. "Come with us. The Crows wouldn't want anything to happen to you." Virushin shook her head, her face obscured by the protective visor, making her expression unreadable. Only her soft voice could be heard as she said, "I think I'm already infected." It was only then that everyone noticed a tear in Virushin's glove, and the blood from the crow's wound had already seeped through. "Don't worry, as long as we have the serum, we'll all survive." Virushin tried to keep her tone light, then turned her head and swiftly washed the blood off her hands before administering first aid to the crow, cleaning the wound, stopping the bleeding, checking for internal injuries, stitching. Each step felt like dancing on the edge of a knife. By the time she finally finished, a wave of intense dizziness washed over her. She gasped heavily, looking down at her exposed hand where purplish-red bruises, identical to those on the crow, had already appeared. As expected, she was infected. Virushin reported the infection to everyone via the intercom, once again reminding them to monitor the condition of the wounded. Half an hour later, the two were transferred to the highest-level isolation ward. Cade Lee's eyes were impossibly red. Virushin tried to sound light-hearted. "Don't be scared, maybe I can be reborn, but you'll be in pain." Through the glass, he saw Virushin on the hospital bed, her skin covered in terrifying bruises and blisters. His heart was breaking. "I won't let you die. The serum is on its way." A few hours later, the serum finally arrived. The serum. "We have it." In the end, the Pope softened his stance toward his student and sent someone to deliver the serum. But only one dose. Virushin struggled to rise from the sickbed, grabbed the serum, and then step by step walked toward the crow. Cade Lee screamed in anguish from outside the door. "Virushin, what are you doing? Inject the serum, or you won't last until the next one." Virushin. But Virushin didn't look back. "Let me in. Let go of me." Cade Lee was firmly held back by the warriors at the door, and he cried out helplessly, "Virushin, do you love him that much? It's only been 3 short months. You're actually willing to give your life for him. What do you want me to do? What can I do?" Virushin turned her head and said weakly, "Cade Lee, you still don't understand me. First and foremost, I am a doctor. As long as he is my patient, whether he is a stranger or an enemy, I will save him." Virushin gasped for breath, a trace of compassionate smile on her face, enunciating each word clearly. "This is the duty of a healer." With that, she no longer looked at Cade Lee's blood-drained face, forcefully tore open the packaging, and plunged the needle fiercely into the crow's vein, the icy liquid instantly flooding his body. "No!" Cade Lee let out a heart-wrenching scream, yet he was utterly powerless. The serum injection was complete. Virushin could no longer hold on and began coughing violently, blood gushing from her mouth like an unending rain. Leaning against the wall, she slowly slid down, her empty gaze fixed on the pale ceiling. Yet, it seemed as if she saw a vast blue sky, one filled with the faces of those she had lost, her mother, that little girl and her sister. Levi, Virushan smiled, her eyes crinkling with warmth. Cade Lee stood frozen outside the door. Watching the scene unfold as overwhelming tears soaked his collar, Virushan had drawn a final, irrevocable line between them with her death, and once again, he couldn't blame anyone but himself for his own helplessness. He remained rooted in place for a long time. When the hazmat-suited personnel entered the ward to remove the body, he suddenly rushed inside, clutching Virushan's hand. Cade Lee smiled through bloodshot eyes. "I told you, I won't let you go again." With those words, he pulled out a gun, pressed it against his chin, and, bang, the world fell completely silent. 3 days later, Crow finally struggled back from the brink of death. Seeing his companion hesitate to speak, his heart tightened. And he instinctively asked, "Has summer arrived?" His companion avoided eye contact, stammering, "Did something happen to Levi?" His companion's expression grew even graver, and Crow's heart instantly plunged into darkness. Ignoring the risk of reopening his wounds, he staggered, ready to rush out of the hospital room to find him. "Captain, you can't go out there, it's dangerous." Several soldiers hurriedly blocked his way. "Get out of my way." The Crow, like a frenzied trapped beast, had bloodshot eyes. "They're all dead," the soldier who had once wept over Levi's corpse shouted at him. "Levi died yesterday afternoon, and Dr. Summer, who was trying to save you, got infected with the MFB virus. She gave you the only dose of serum and has already passed away." Sacrifice, serum, die. He felt as if his brain had malfunctioned. Why couldn't he understand what the other person was saying? "Captain, you can't leave here. Don't let their deaths be in vain." The atmosphere was deathly silent. After a long pause, the Crow rasped, "Where are the bodies? I'll go, see them off one last time." "I'm sorry, the virus is highly contagious. All remains are currently being handled according to the highest epidemic prevention standards, sealed and processed. You cannot approach." This was also Dr. Xia Tian's final request. Crows swam before his eyes. Was he truly still alive? Then why did it feel like he was in hell? The person he loved most had sacrificed herself for him, yet he couldn't even convey a word of thanks or farewell. He walked out in a daze. Perhaps he was already dead, and this was just an illusion. If he kept moving forward, he would surely grasp those warm hands. But the next moment, he saw a withered bouquet of roses placed by the window, as if it were her silent farewell. 3 years later, the distant nation finally reached a fragile ceasefire agreement. The smoke of battle cleared, leaving only devastation in its wake. During this time, the Crow lost an eye and grew even more silent. Though his handsome features remained, no one dared to approach him. Carefully, he retrieved an old photograph from his chest. In the photo, Virushan stands in the center, with Li Wei on her left and himself on her right. Li Wei's smile is as radiant and carefree as ever, while Virushan's gaze seems to pierce through time, as if it had never left. The plane finally lands. The Crow carefully puts away the photo and strides toward the cabin door. He can't wait to fulfill a long overdue promise, to visit her hometown, to see, on her behalf, that place free of gunfire and smoke, blooming with flowers, carrying Li Wei's smile and her hopes, to live on and witness the face of peace.